Hello and welcome to WION World is One. This is Race to Power with me, Hem Kaur Saroya. And here's what we've lined up for you on the show tonight. In the US, lawmakers remain divided over a House-passed bill to extend funding for 7 weeks. Senators will take up the stopgap bill and also the Democratic alternative for vote in a few hours from now. We'll discuss this on the show tonight. Also on the show, in France, political parties are still at loggerheads over a highly contested budget bill. The austerity measures have sparked unrest. We will be getting you all the updates on this as well. All right, let's start with the United States. US government shutdown. It's entered day 3 and a political blame game over it continues. But livelihood of thousands is at stake, from workers to program beneficiaries. On Thursday, the US Senate adjourned the session after discussions and no vote on the occasion of Yom Kippur, a Jewish holiday. Lawmakers remain divided over a House-passed bill to extend funding for 7 weeks. Senators will take up the stopgap bill and also the Democratic alternative for votes in a few hours from now. Democrat lawmakers are blaming the Trump administration for government shutdown, accusing the red camp of not opening dialogue on issues concerning the blue camp, primarily Medicaid and other healthcare programs for low-income Americans.
Republicans have shut the government down because they don't want to provide health care to working class Americans. House Democrats continue to be here on duty. House Republicans are on vacation. We are ready, we are willing, we are able to sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, including the president and the vice president, to try to find a path forward to reopen the government, enact a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people while at the same time addressing the Republican health care crisis.
The Republicans, on the other hand, blame their political rivals for rejecting the stopgap bill to keep the government functioning. As the shutdown drags on, Donald Trump is considering cutting thousands of federal jobs and shut down federal programs that are favored by the Democrats.
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault, and it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place, and I will probably do that.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the administration is reviewing agencies that do not align with its priorities, calling some a waste of taxpayer dollars. As the partisan rift increases over policies, federal staff whose jobs are on the line, they're paying the price for the shutdown. Staffers furloughed or discharged due to funding crisis say they're paralyzed due to this shutdown.
We are essentially paralyzed and without any way to fight back in a real-time sense. And they know that. And 90% of this game is like psychological warfare. They know that people are scared. They know that people want to come back because they want to work. They want to do the work that they're doing, but they also got to feed their families.
All right, for more on this, joining us live on the broadcast is Reena Shah, who is the former presidential campaign chief spokesperson and senior advisor, founder Relax Strategies. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One, Ms. Shah.
Hi.
All right, let's get right into it. Of course, we have been covering this for the past few days. We've spoken to a lot of experts as well, and a lot of them do say that perhaps the best thing right now, of course, the obvious choice would be to raise the debt ceiling. The other choice here could be that you pass this clean bill. And they also say that perhaps healthcare, that is something that the Democrats need to fight as an electoral issue. And that's something that needs to be dealt with later. To that end, I just want to ask you, if we were to go by studies by Yale and some universities, 15 million low-income working class thrown off healthcare, that could result in 50,000 lives lost a year. Do you think still passing a clean bill, do you think it's worth that cost?
Let me put it this way. Shutdowns aren't just short term, they leave lasting economic scars as well. When we look at the past, what we saw beyond just the cost of $11 billion that the last shutdown cost Americans in 2018, 2019, we also see a hit to the GDP that's gone for good. And so, in essence, what we're talking about right now is what Trump and the Republicans want. What they know and what we know from what Project 2025 laid out during his campaign, the blueprint essentially for how his administration is doing things, they are pushing 20% agency staff cuts. And so also I'm thinking of those because those are permanent layoffs. And each week delays job reports as well. That also risks 0.2% GDP loss by really clouding Fed rate decisions. And then let's not forget the small businesses who are impacted here. The ones near federal hubs lose $2 million daily in revenue during shutdowns. But what is so important this time, and this particular shutdown, beyond what it does beyond just undercutting consumer confidence, is hitting Americans right at the heart, healthcare, because this is a healthcare related shutdown. At the end of the day, we can say we'll lose money, Congress risks their approval rating. But what I'm also finding as I look at this shutdown being a standoff over those Affordable Care Act subsidies is that 20 million Americans are impacted. And we don't know how Congress is going to solve this, because what we see Democrats doing in this moment is demanding extensions. They say they want to avoid some 79% of hikes on healthcare premiums. But the Republicans are saying they want $26 billion in cuts. And so when again you look at Project 2025, Republicans are really aiming to shrink what they call Democrat agencies. And at the end of the day, what this is ideological warfare. It could get sorted out in 1 to 3 weeks. If we look at history, it shows that 10 of 11 modern shutdowns have ended in under 21 days via a continuing resolution.
Right, Ms. Shah, of course, what it is at the end of the day is a nightmare for the common American people. And of course, that's not lost on anyone. But beyond the theatrics and beyond the partisan politics, what will it take for both sides to reach a consensus at this point?
At this point, I really don't know what it is, because they are openly fighting about really what it means for American federal government to deliver for the needs of the American people. As we all know, a shutdown has geopolitical impacts. It's going to impact things like how much aid we give to Ukraine. That was something that was central to Trump's campaign. Do Americans want to see money ported over from our federal government to aid another country in its fight against an autocrat like Putin? A shutdown really, though, when we talk about maybe what could bring lawmakers to the table here, a shutdown broadcasts American dysfunction to cities like Moscow, Beijing, and beyond. And so what we're seeing, our allies will doubt us when we stall. And Japan and Taiwan are going to question our Pacific commitments. China's state media is already mocking our self-inflicted chaos. So it's propaganda fuel. And what I'm telling lawmakers is that long term, eroded trust weakens the NATO alliance, and it emboldens, again, autocrats like Putin. A month-long shutdown essentially could delay $4 billion in Ukraine aid. That's according to our Pentagon. So this isn't just domestic. It's a blow to our role as the world's anchor. Reliability defines U.S. power, and shutdowns make us look like a flickering light. So that is what I hope will allow cooler heads to prevail and broker a deal.
Right, absolutely, Ms. Shah. We can only hope that cooler heads do prevail and this shutdown comes to an end as early as possible. Thank you so much for joining us on Race to Power with your insights on this.
Thanks for having me here.
All right, we have breaking news coming in now. US President Donald Trump has extended the deadline for Hamas to respond to the proposed peace deal. Trump has given Hamas till Sunday 6 p.m. Washington time, which is more than 48 hours extension. In his lengthy social media post, Trump said, and I'm quoting here, an agreement must be reached with Hamas by Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. Every country has signed on. If this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, like no one has ever seen before, will break out against Hamas. So as you know, earlier Hamas was given 72 hours. Then that deadline was extended to be 4 days. After that, we saw that the White House clarified that Trump will, of course, come up with his own deadline for this, and that 3 to 4 day deadline might not be rigid. Now we're seeing this development that has come in. For more on this, we're also now being joined by our correspondent, Susan Tehrani, who's joining us on the phone line. Susan, thank you so much for joining us. This extension that has come, over 48-hour extension. Susan, what can you tell us? All right, Susan, I hope you can hear me. All right, we'll try and get Susan back online with us, but let's just once again tell you what has happened right now. As you know, Trump has proposed his Gaza peace plan that happened on the 29th of September. In the initial peace plan, he had said that Hamas had 72 hours after Israel's acceptance to accept this deal, post which it was extended to 4 days. And now Donald Trump has extended the deadline for Hamas to respond to this proposed peace plan. Trump has given Hamas till Sunday 6 p.m. Washington time, and that's more than 48-hour extension. In his post, he said an agreement must be reached with Hamas by Sunday 6 p.m. Every country has signed on. If this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, like no one has ever seen before, will break out against Hamas. All right then, in France, political parties are still at loggerheads over a highly contested budget bill. The political climate remains uncertain, with a newly appointed Prime Minister who still does not have a cabinet. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has made an attempt at diffusing political tension and anger against the proposed austerity measures in the 2026 budget plan. During an address a day prior, Lecornu announced that he will not use special powers to force the budget through Parliament.
I think we are in the most parliamentary moment of the Fifth Republic. But for that, each deputy must be able to have power, to have responsibility, to take on their responsibilities. Ultimately, that's what prevents us from moving forward. It's the ability for the debate to start. And so I have decided to forego Article 49, Paragraph 3 of the Constitution. Since this article essentially allows the government to interrupt debates, to engage the government's responsibility, and for the government to write the script.
Now, opposition parties have reacted to the Prime Minister's latest announcement with either cautious optimism or straight criticism. Leader of the far-right National Rally Party welcomed the announcement but said that the party will still be taking a wait-and-watch approach.
Therefore, this announcement that the Prime Minister will not use Article 49.3 seems more respectful of democracy than what has been done in previous years. For now, we are still waiting, once again, for this general policy speech, which will need to be much clearer than what I heard this morning, in order to convince the RN to at least participate in the budgetary discussions.
Now, on the other hand, the French Communist Party has termed Lecornu's revocation order as trickery.
If there is no Article 49.3, but we cannot amend a text, if we cannot table an amendment to repeal or suspend the pension reform or increase pensions, it is trickery, it is not possible, and therefore we will not accept it.
While a political deadlock over France's budget bill persists, there is anger on the streets. France witnessed a general strike on Thursday. Thousands stepped out onto the streets in a nationwide protest. The rallies came in response to trade unions urging action against plans for sharp spending cuts in next year's budget. Now, a group of 130 activists, lawyers and journalists submitted a letter to the Commonwealth Secretariat expressing alarm over the 19-month delay in publishing the Commonwealth Observer Group's final report on Pakistan's 2024 general elections. The report, released on the 30th of September, has flagged serious irregularities. In their letter, the signatories described the delay in releasing the report as extraordinary and unprecedented in Commonwealth election monitoring history. They pointed out that election reports are routinely published soon after polling. They said, and I'm quoting here, "We're not aware that any other COG report has been published 10 months after transmittal of the final report to the Secretariat by the relevant observer group." The letter noted that the COG had transmitted Pakistan's 2024 report signed by all 15 members to the Secretariat on the 20th of November, but it was withheld from the public for 10 months. They also expressed concern that according to a statement by the Commonwealth on the 14th of September, the report has already been shared with the federal government and the Election Commission of Pakistan, but now with voters or civil society. The report confirmed that decision by key institutions consistently limited the ability of one particular party to contest the elections, undermining credibility, transparency and inclusiveness. It highlighted worrying observations such as restrictions on freedom of association, reduced transparency due to telecommunications blackouts, discrepancies in polling results, curbs on journalistic freedoms and mass arrests of PTI members. It also expressed immense concern over the allegations of judicial interference in election-related cases. The letter urged the Secretariat to take remedial steps, including commissioning an independent inquiry into the 19-month delay in publishing the report, adopting a policy to automatically publish observer reports within a fixed time frame. Also, it has sought an unequivocal apology to the people of Pakistan for failing them at a critical moment in their history. And there's a persisting political standoff between Argentina's congressional lawmakers and the country's president. In the latest move, Senate has overturned Javier Milei's veto on education and health-related public funding. Senators overwhelmingly overturned the president's veto on laws that increase government funding for Argentina's universities and pediatric health care. The Senate, which has opposition in majority, voted 59-7 to restore university funding and 58-7 to uphold the pediatric emergency law. This comes after lower house voted along same lines just last month. Now, onlookers and protesters standing outside Parliament erupted in celebration after Senate overturned the veto, creating a passage for fresh funding of public sector education and healthcare.
We now have a law that gives us a chance to save the Garahan Pediatric Hospital. We demand its implementation. Milei must obey the law, not just the pediatric emergency law, but also the disability law. If Milei continues to ignore the law, there will be massive social unrest because the people's mandate is clear.
That the veto can indeed be overturned is a cause for collective celebration, not just for the university or those of us who live it every day, but for society as a whole, which, after all, is the one that funds the university and makes free education possible.
Now, Argentina's hospitals and colleges are both struggling to survive and maintain operations as government funds have been slashed under Milei's austerity measures to control the country's inflation. Now, youngsters in several countries are putting their governments on a corruption watch, demanding accountability and sweeping reforms. Here's a lowdown of anti-government protests raging across the world. In Madagascar, clashes took place again between protesters and the police as demonstrations in the country complete 1 week of unrest. Shops and businesses remain shut in capital as security forces disperse protesters and an uneasy calm hangs over empty streets for now. Sporadic protests have been ongoing in the country since 2019. However, the demonstrations have escalated as demands on reversing water shortage and power outage remain unaddressed. Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina had disbanded the government earlier this week, but protesters are demanding his resignation as well and calling for a complete political overhaul. In Morocco, the Gen Z group leading the mass protests called for this comes following several days of violent protests that claimed the lives of 3 people. They've called for more measures to be taken here, and the protest group, which goes by the name Gen Z 212, has said that this current government has failed to protect the constitutional rights of Moroccans and respond to their social demands. Hence, they need to go. They also demanded that the release of those detained in connection with the protests should be processed. In response to Morocco's intensifying protests, Prime Minister has said that he was open to dialogue and also ready to respond to the demands of the demonstrators. He has also condoled the deaths of 3 people, calling it unfortunate. However, Moroccans remain divided over the nationwide Gen Z protests. Some people have described the young protesters as criminals, accusing them of looting and theft. All right, let's shift our focus now. Myanmar's pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi's son has sought help from China for the release of his mother. The military junta has kept Suu Kyi in jail following the 2021 coup. 48-year-old Kim Aris, the youngest son of the detained leader, called on Chinese President Xi Jinping to urge military junta to release his mother. Aris said Beijing holds the most influence among foreign states given its long ties and extensive investments in Myanmar. Aris said, and I'm quoting here, China has been calling for May's release, and according to my sources, Chinese officials want to see her as much as anyone else, and they have been asking for access. They've not been given access to her as far as I'm aware, just as nobody else has. Aris invited anyone outside the prison to try to see if his mother is still alive. News agency Reuters in August quoted a report by the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar, a UN body that claimed victims in the country's detention facilities endured beatings, electric shocks, gang rape, strangulation, and other forms of torture. Myanmar's shadow National Unity government said that if Suu Kyi remained imprisoned or died in detention, the country's crisis would deepen. Aung San Suu Kyi has spent a total of 19 years in detention since 1989, first under house arrest and now in solitary confinement in prison. She is the recipient of the 1991 Nobel Peace Prize, which her sons accepted on her behalf. All right, let's take a quick look at what else is making news from the world of politics. Voting underway in Czech Republic's general elections. Frontrunner Andrej Babiš was seen casting his ballot in a voting process that will last 2 days. The election mandate will determine not only the country's domestic policy shift, but also its stance in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Portugal's parliament has approved a revised immigrant bill after Constitutional Court blocked the previous draft for being far too harsh on family members of immigrants seeking to join loved ones in the country. The current bill was passed comfortably as the right-wing ruling party has a clear majority in parliament. All the left-wing parties voted against the bill, while the centre-right coalition lawmakers and far-right party members voted in its favour. Now, a notorious sculpture depicting US President Donald Trump and disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein back on the streets of Washington, D.C. The bronze sculpture appeared last month too, but was removed off the streets quickly. We're going to leave you with this one. Thank you so much for joining us on Race to Power.
I'm joking. I'm not joking. You're my subject, man.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
As the world revisits Mahatma Gandhi's legacy, we decode the different depictions of India's father of the nation on screen.
हेलो सर, पुलिस भर्ती का रिजल्ट कब तक आएगा?
Meet Indian actor Vishal Jetwa as he talks about Homebound's big journey to Oscars. And rejoice in the celebrations of Indian festivals with musical duo Salim and Suleiman Merchant. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Hello and welcome.